All right, and we are live. Welcome back with Murphy Mac to another episode of the Fitness Beginner Podcast, where we help you get started on your fitness journey. How's it going, everybody? Hope y'all are having a great start to your week. We have another podcast episode for y'all today, and we have two guests joining us for another interview on the podcast. We're going to bring them up onto the screen now. We have Mr. Ty Erasmus and Mr. Udo Erasmus. So Ty, I believe, works kind of more in the fitness industry, and Udo works more. He develops his own products. Did I say that correctly? Oil products and things like that. I'm gonna let them introduce themselves and tell them a little bit more about who they are and what they do. But before we do that, I'm just gonna give y'all a quick synopsis of what we are and what we do. So this is a fitness beginner podcast, and the goal is just to help people get started and to get motivated on their fitness journey. So I typically keep things, pretty basic when it's just me and myself. But when I have people on, I guess like you, I like to, dive a little bit deeper into the weeds of, fitness and health to try to help people learn a little bit more in whatever field that you work in. So that's why I like having guests on. So thank y'all for joining the podcast. I'm sure the listeners will definitely take something from this today. So as long as we help one person, then that was a success in my opinion. So with that being said, Ty, I guess you can start us off. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, you bet. Well, first of all, thanks for having us on your podcast. And I guess I'll start. I started in the fitness industry back in the early '90s, and before that, I was very much into sports. In high school, is when I decided I wanted to pursue a career in the fitness industry. And then once I graduated from high school, I went straight into Douglas College and studied fitness theory. And then from there, went on to continued studies with the International Sports Sciences Association, and then also NESTA. And originally started just working in gyms, and then started my own independent personal training company specializing in sport nutrition. And it's just continued to evolve from there. I was actually the first person to start fitness boot camps in Vancouver, where I'm based out of in Canada, back in 2004. And I work with athletes, the general public, and clients in Hollywood now, and getting them ready for their roles or their scenes in their features or series. And love it. It's constantly evolving, and I'll probably be involved in it to some extent, in some way, always evolving. Probably for the rest of my life because I enjoy it that much. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
So you mentioned fitness theory. You went to school for that. What exactly is fitness theory? I've never heard that.
Yeah. So fitness theory was basically all your basic sciences and biology for fitness, as well as the training components. So it's sort of the base program to get started in the fitness industry. And then again, this is really dating myself, but back in the '90s, there wasn't as much available as far as education. Different schools to choose from back then. ACE was one of the main schools, and ISSA was the only other one. And so I chose ISSA because they were more what I thought was well-rounded at the time. They covered a lot of sport nutrition related content that you just couldn't find in the other certifications, and that was always my interest, is bridging that gap between the training component as well as the nutrition component. So yeah.
Is that similar to like a kinesiology degree? Is that the same
Yes.
thing? Okay.
Yeah.
Just some different terminology.
Yeah, except it's all fitness heavy. You're not having to take courses like you would in university that you're not going to use. You can literally select every single course that that's specific to what you want to specialize in when you enter the fitness industry.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, and Udo, if you would, am I saying that right, Udo? Is that correct? If you would,
Yep.
introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I got interested in health. I have a background in biochemistry, genetics, and biology. I just find nature fascinating, and I always wanted to know everything about it. And I literally had religious experiences studying biology. It's like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And I got interested in health sort of in the back door because I got poisoned by pesticides. And I hadn't studied nutrition, but I had the background in biology. And the doctors didn't have anything. So I said, okay, I'm on my own. And so I went into the research and looked at everything that has to do with nutrition and health and nutrition and disease from the perspective that the body is made out of food, of course, water and air too, but I was just thinking food. Body's made out of food. So if something goes wrong with your body, then what you want, and it's always turning over, right? That's why you have to eat. Your body's always turning over. I was told 98% of the atoms in your body are removed and replaced every year. So that's like almost all of you is new every year, right? And I thought, okay, well, if something goes wrong with the body, then what you need to do is you need to raise your standards for bodybuilding materials, food, water, and air, better food, better water, or fresher food, fresher water, fresher air. And in 1 year, you can have rebuilt 98% of your body to a higher standard. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And then I got into, well, what are the building blocks? Well, there's 18 minerals that your body can't make that has to bring in from outside, 13 vitamins, got to bring in from outside, 9 essential amino acids from proteins, and 2 essential fatty acids that come from oils or from seeds and nuts that contain the oils. And the area that was the most confusing was the area on oils. And literally, you can say that more health problems, more physical health problems come from damaged oils than any other thing in nutrition. And more health benefits will come from getting the oil change your body needs, getting oils that are undamaged, and optimizing their intake. More health problems will come from that than anything else you do in nutrition. And so I decided we should be making oils with health in mind because they're the most sensitive nutrients. They're damaged by light, oxygen, and heat. They should get the most care, and we give them the least care. And so they're the most damaged food we have. And so I got into designing how to make oils with health in mind and bringing them back, and especially omega-3s, because omega-3s are too low in 99% of the population, too low for optimum health. And it turns out they're the highest energy molecules. They're the most sensitive molecules. They do the most to increase energy levels in the body. And I got into nutrition and health and weight loss sort of in the back door, finding out that people were finding weight management easier when they got the right oils. And it turns out omega-3s turn on your fat burning genes and turn off your fat production genes. So they should be part of, like, if you want to get fit and normal weighted, then omega-3s need to be part of that, but they have to be made with health in mind. And then we did some studies with athletes, and they increased their performance to exhaustion in their sport within 30 days by 40 to 60% if they took enough of the right kinds of oils. And so that's how I got into that. And then I found out the summary of omega-3s says when you increase omega-3s in your diet, provided they're undamaged, you can improve virtually every major degenerative condition of our time. Because all of our, pretty much, if they're essential, and almost nobody's getting enough of them, then obviously just about everything that goes wrong with the body will have an aspect of that problem that is due to not getting enough omega-3s. And so I kind of became they called me the omega man or the fat man, because I was working with oils, and then I worked with digestion. And now I'm looking at like total health as a teachable field and based in nature and human nature. So that's what I'm into.
Yeah, and Ty mentioned earlier that y'all are from Canada, so y'all are in the perfect place for nature. I was telling them
Uh,
we actually took a
we
trip up there and we absolutely loved it. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, where'd you go?
Banff.
Oh, Banff. Oh, Banff is
Yeah,
beautiful.
it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
beautiful. I really enjoyed that trip. So I'm in the
yeah.
south.
Well,
I'm in South Alabama so completely different
oh,
environment.
Alabama. Yeah, that's very.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So you mentioned a lot the word damaged oils. So for
Yeah.
somebody that's not very familiar with this topic, what exactly is a damaged oil?
Well, if you eat seeds and nuts, let's say for flaxseed oil is a good source of omega threes. If you eat the seeds the way nature makes them, you're going to get omega three in them in the oil that's in the flax, and that's in the way nature made it. When you pull out the oil, and especially the way the industry makes oils to try and give them a longer shelf life, what they do is they treat them with sodium hydroxide and very harsh chemicals, and then they heat them to frying temperature for half an hour to get rid of half of the pesticides in the oils. And in the process, they damage a half to 1% of the molecules. You might not think that's very much, but in a tablespoon of an oil that is that where 1% of the molecules are damaged, you're going to get more than 1 million damaged molecules for every one of your body's 60 trillion cells. So that's like 60 quintillion damaged molecules. And there are all kinds of different ones: broken molecules, twisted molecules, cross-linked molecules, oxidized molecules, cyclized molecules, polymerized, dimerized, trimerized molecules. So all kinds of different ways that you can wreck these very sensitive chemicals. And then they go into your body, but they never existed in that form in nature. So nature didn't make a program for breaking them down. So they take up space in your body, and wherever they go in your body, they interfere with what should be going on there. And that's how they cause disease, right? You might not notice on the first tablespoon or on the first 10 tablespoons, but if you do it day after day after day at 2 to 4 tablespoons a day, and after a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, the research says they increase inflammation, which is behind most degenerative conditions, and they increase your risk of cancer. And so then you say, okay, well, you know what? We should be making oils with health in mind, not with shelf life, because the industry does this damage to get a longer shelf life on oils that by nature have a short shelf life. So there's all kinds of damage that's done to them by these harsh processes. And we're natural creatures, right? We're part of nature. We ought to be eating our foods the way nature makes it. And
Yeah,
the
this is a
molecules need to be in their natural state. That's what undamaged means.
yeah, this is a very like hot topic now. I see a lot of these oil discussions online, especially with social media. A lot of people talk about it a lot. So it's good that it's being brought up, but it seems like everybody just kind of bashes seed oils.
Yeah.
But from what I'm hearing from you, it's not necessarily the seed oil that's bad. It's the way they process it is what's
It's
bad.
the damn, yeah, the people who do that. Like, this is really interesting. I've been working in oils for 45 years. I have a book called Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. I haven't been hiding. I've done 10,000 lectures in media, 40 countries, right? So, so I'm the fat man, right? And not one of the people who disses seed oils and omega 6s, not one of those people has ever talked to me. And what they've done is they haven't done their homework, because how I got to this was I was reading an article. It said omega 6s are essential, which means you can't make them. You got to have them. You got to bring them in from outside. If you don't get enough long enough, you die. But if you bring them back while you're losing your health before you die, then all of the problems that are caused by not getting enough are reversed. So it's a very, very precise definition. Okay. So So it says omega-6 is an essential nutrient, so you have to have it. And the very next study I got said omega-6 gives you cancer and kills you. And I'm going, what? How can you? I have to have it so it can kill me? And so it was like, I thought, no, I must be missing something. And it was that contradiction, trying to figure out how to deal with it, that made me look deeper and look at how oils are made. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's why. So there are two issues. One is a lot of omega-6 is not enough omega-3, so the ratio is off. The omega-6s are damaged. Those are the two main reasons. And to fix them, you've got to bring in omega-3s, and you got to get omega-6s undamaged. And then they are actually really good for health. And we have like literally the research says you can improve virtually every major degenerative condition of our time when you make that oil change. Mm-hmm. When you make sure you get your oils made with health in mind.
Is there any other way to get omega-6s, or does it have to be through the oil?
Well, you find them in all whole foods. Mm. You know, if it was grass, 0.1% of oil, but you get grains of 2 to 4% oil, beans have 4% oil, soybeans have 18% oil, seeds and nuts have anywhere from 20 to 60% oil in them. So then you either eat the seeds and nuts that contain them, or you get the oils. But if you get the oils, you've got to get them made with health in mind. So and you don't want to fry them, and you don't want to fry them because if you fry the best oils, they will fry your health.
Yeah, so you don't necessarily need to be taking in this oil. It's just another way of doing it. You could just eat seeds and things and get the right nutrients that you need that way.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. Can you get optimum is the question. And I can't get optimum just from seeds because I've actually tried it. And in summer, you need less than in winter. But even in California in summer when it's warm, I could not get enough oil from the seeds to make my skin soft and velvety. That's how we measure optimum, because skin gets them last and loses them first. So
the oil is just more dense, more nutrient dense than the regular seed.
Correct. Yeah, because but seeds and nuts are really good food. But if you can't get your optimum, then use some oil on top of that.
Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of just like a supplement. You're just adding to it.
Yeah, it's more than a supplement. Oils are major nutrients. So we're not talking about a couple of pills. We're talking about 2 to 4 tablespoons mixed in food, spread out over the course of the day.
So are there any oils out there that you would recommend staying away from? I know you said it's kind of the way you process the oil, not necessarily the oil itself, but is there any out there that you don't recommend?
All of the colorless, odorless, tasteless oils that line the shelves in plastic bottles that are being wrecked by light, that have already been wrecked by the processing, and that you then use for frying and wreck them even more. So fundamentally, you need to do an oil change. Your body needs an oil change, just like your car. You get the dirty oils out, and you got to replace the dirty oils with clean oils.
So are there, in like a normal, like big box grocery store, are there any good oils that they sell, or do you pretty much have to go straight to the oils, the company, like order it online? Can you go, like, is there, like, if I went to Walmart today, is there one I could get off the shelf that would?
Well, when we started, we were starting from scratch, so we worked in the natural foods industry, and the major food industry has still not really picked up on it, because we haven't done enough of a good job to get the word out to everybody, or to convince everybody, right? So you can get the seeds and nuts, but you want to get those organic because pesticides in your oils is not a good idea. So you want to get organic seeds and nuts. You can get some of those in some of the major stores. The oils you pretty much have to go to online or to the natural foods, and we put them in. They're refrigerated. Those oils are refrigerated. So that's how we help to keep them fresh. So you find them in a brown glass bottle, in a box, in the fridge, in the supplement section. in the natural food stores. And you can get them on Amazon as well. But I tell people, go to the stores because they're in the fridge there.
So what happened? Where was the misconnection? Like, why do we have all these, damaged oils in the stores nowadays? Like, what went wrong? Like, why didn't it, like, why don't these oil companies, why are they selling such a bad product, essentially? Like, why are they not doing it the right way?
Because they were always more interested in shelf life, so they get big markets, than they were in health. And so they just did what got them it's like somebody told me once, your goal defines your journey. So if your goal is shelf life, what you're going to do to the oil to get that shelf life is different than if health is your goal. Mm-hmm. And so we had to literally create a different way of processing the oils so that we don't damage them. And the industry has never made health their criterion. For advertising, they'll say stuff about health, but they don't really care about health. They just care about sales.
Yeah, that's so true. You're starting to see a little bit of shift nowadays, though. You're seeing these. I don't know about in Canada, but the U.S. is starting to crack down on some of the the dyes and things in food. So I think that's a good thing. We're going in the right direction.
Slowly, yeah.
Yeah, you're starting to see. I saw the other day, this week, I saw that Doritos is releasing some kind of chip without the artificial dyes and stuff in it. So you're starting to see companies go that way.
Yeah, Kennedy's pushing that, right?
Maha. That's right.
Maha. Yeah. In fact, I just came off a conference call with Maha.
Nice.
Just before I got on here. And I like what they're doing. You see, you know what? Is like health is one of the few things that is really important. It's one of the most important things we think about. We always got something going on, right? And why aren't we making that the focus? We're going to live here for 60 years, 70 years, 80 years. And when we do it right, we can have a pretty good journey.
Yeah, I would argue health is probably the most important.
I would too.
If you don't have health, then you don't have nothing really. You're not going to live.
Yeah. Exactly. What does it say? When you don't have health, you only have one goal. When you have health, you can have 100 goals, and when you don't have health, you only have one goal.
Yeah.
Anyway, so but talking about working with the oils and what they do in practice, that's Ty's bailiwick.
Yeah. So what are these damaged oils? What are they doing, to your body? Like why is it such a bad thing to your body, and why do we need to stay away from them?
Look. Your body is a mansion. That's maybe not the right word, but your body has an architecture. It's a molecular architecture, right? Every part of your body, every muscle cell, every cell, every molecule, has an architecture, and that architecture comes from nature. And if you want the architecture to be natural, which is health is the natural state, if you want that architecture to be natural, you got to eat in line with nature. When you change the molecules, you're creating a different architecture in your body. And the molecules that don't belong in the body, wherever they go in your body, what's supposed to happen there can't happen in that space. So it blocks something or sidetracks processes or interferes with biochemical reactions. And when enough of that happens, you get symptoms: pain, inflammation, stiffness, all kinds of things. And eventually you get something that somebody says, oh, you got cardio, oh, you got cancer, oh, you got rheumatoid arthritis, oh, you got Alzheimer's disease or whatever. And all of that comes from living out of line with nature and living out of line with your nature. So if you want to get it right, it's like industry has never improved on nature. Nature's been here for 4 billion years, and everything that didn't work got recycled. So we're the end product of an amazing success, generation after generation after generation, right? So we have this success. And then what we do is we bring in industries. Oh, yeah, we can have more shovel. Oh, yeah, we can make more money. And then we screw it up because the goal is off. Nature only has one goal, to be natural, to be what it is. But then we come in our head, we invent all kinds of crazy things for making money instead of for health. See, nature is interested in health, and whatever isn't healthy gets recycled quickly, right? Before it reproduces, and then those genes are gone, right? So even though we can change things and make them unnatural, question we have to ask ourselves, okay, just because we can, should we? And the answer to that is, if you want to be healthy, no, you should not. Right?
Absolutely. So I guess this will be a question for Ty, since you work more in the fitness industry. How are you implementing these oils, for example, say like into your client's life, into their diet? Are you weeding out the old oils that they've been eating and trying to replace them with new ones, or how does that process look, and like how do you kind of coach your clients on that?
Yeah, I have a few answers to that, but I would, if I was just to simplify it, I base it on, first you have to assess where the client is at. What's their knowledge base? What are they willing to do? I tend to focus on what's missing rather than you can't do this, you can't do that. All the things that essentially would stress them out in making those changes. I typically start with a food journal, and there's lots of great apps out there that people can use, or if they even want to just write them down in a write them in a book type journal, that works too. When it's a powerful tool, because when anybody starts doing that, they start to actually see what they do on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, gosh, even an hourly basis. Most people, when they eat, you ask them the next day what they ate the day before, and they don't even remember. And so journaling is super powerful because they can actually see what they're doing, and they can start to see what's actually missing, and essentially what they can do better. So that's what I typically start with, and then from there, I educate them on macronutrients in general, so proteins, carbs, and fats, and then I get more specific. So what types of carbs? Because a protein is not a protein, a fat is not a fat, and a carb is not a carb. You've got good ones, and you've got challenging ones, or not so great ones. If you're overcooking your proteins, you can denature the protein, and then you're not getting those essential amino acids that you need from protein. With carbohydrates, you've got fibrous carbohydrates, you've got starchy carbohydrates, you've got simple carbohydrates. They're all absorbed differently and utilized differently. And then, of course, with fats, you've got different types of fats and how your body's going to benefit from those fats. And so what I typically teach when it comes to fats is how to understand the differences between fats and how to incorporate, again, what's missing, which would be those essential fatty acids typically. I don't think I've ever had a client in 35 years that's had the fats part of their nutrition program or their eating habits correct or optimal. And so I try to simplify it as much as possible because it can be overwhelming, especially for someone that is new to using an eating strategy. And then I help them to understand, the difference between cooking with oils and adding healthy oils to their food after it's been cooked or prepared. Or let's say if they're a meal prepper, that they prepare their meals in advance, put their meals ideally in glass, and then when they go to eat that particular meal, if they're reheating it, to then add that good fats or oils to the meal right before they eat it. So after it's been reheated or warmed up. So I start there. However, I do work with clients where I do very customized meal plans, and that's where you can do a much deeper dive. But it's all about really evaluating where the client's at. And then, depending on what it is that they want to achieve, whether it's aesthetic or performance based, the macronutrient profiles are going to vary substantially based on their needs. So again, what's going to be the ratio of proteins to fats to carbs going to look like for their specific needs or sport, or like I said, if it's aesthetic, it can be whether it's for fitness competitions or bodybuilding, or someone that just wants to kick sand at the beach, in the summer. It's all different, and I think it really starts with evaluating where the client is at and what's realistic for them to be able to implement easily.
Awesome. One thing you mentioned earlier, you talked about overcooking your protein. That's kind of caught my attention.
Yeah.
So what would consider something to be overcooked? Like how do you know, like when does it start losing its, micronutrients from
Yeah.
being overcooked?
I like to use steak as an example. So medium rare is ideal. As soon as you start to pass medium rare into more cooked, that's when you start to denature protein.
How much does that really affect the, the micronutrients, and is it like a major effect, or is it just little, or?
Well, I think the most significant effect that someone is going to experience would be the rate of recovery post-exercise. So, their DOMS, or delayed onset muscle soreness, if you want to use DOMS as an example. But if an individual finds that they're not recovering as quickly from exercise, or if their goal is to put on lean muscle tissue, then they may see, if they're overcooking their proteins, they may discover that they don't, their gains, as we call it in the fitness industry, start to dwindle. But I think the best measure is post-exercise muscle recovery. How quickly are you recovering from that muscle soreness from your activity or your workout, or whatever that is? And as we age, we actually need to consume more protein because our ability to synthesize protein starts to slow down. And so, as we get into our later years, as I'm sure you're well aware, we start to lose lean muscle tissue if we don't do what's required to maintain it, which is weight-bearing exercise. So I think that protein plays a crucial role, especially, in every stage, but especially in later stages of life. It's critical that you get high quality protein sources.
Yeah, that's interesting you brought that up. I never really heard somebody bring that, kind of argument up. I guess I kind of always understood that, if you overcook it, it will affect it more. But I never really, utilize that in my diet. I never thought about it like you did. So that was an interesting point. That's why I was curious when you brought it up.
Can I make a short comment?
Go ahead.
Can I add a short comment? If you look at nature, how every creature that lives in nature that eats food, eats its food fresh, whole, raw, organic, local, mostly seasonal, and probably for human beings, mostly plant-based, because when the hunters only had rocks to hunt with, they came home without meat most of the time, right? Because the animals run away or they fight back or whatever, and they could always then go and hunt some vegetables because they're easy to hunt down and kill, right? So if you look at that as the standard that was developed over the past 4 billion years, maybe all of the cooking and frying that we do, maybe that's not as good for us as we've been told that it is by somebody who sells frying pans. Right?
Yeah. So on that thought, do you think we should eat our food raw?
Every other creature does, including the ones that eat meat. Even the what do you call them? The vultures. They eat rotting meat, but they eat that raw too. They don't cook it. They don't. They have, of course, they're set up for it. In a way, we're not. But everything in nature is raw. And your body, if you take your clothes off and you stand there, you're raw. right? And if something was going to eat you as food, it would be eating you raw. You never see a squirrel with a frying pan, right? Or a wolf with a frying pan, right? So from that perspective, it's something to keep in mind, maybe a direction in which to go from wherever you are, because we're mostly not living like that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point when you put it that way. When you look at nature, yeah, everything besides us eats food raw. So it is interesting. It makes
Yeah,
you
and
think.
then if so the question is, should you trust your doctor or should you trust nature? Well, in my view, trusting Dr. Nature is probably better than trusting Doctor.
Yeah, yeah. I always say if you're bleeding or if your bone's sticking out, you can
Yeah,
go see a doctor. Other than that,
Other than that,
probably don't
try
need
to
to.
avoid them. Yeah,
exactly.
apple a day keeps the doctor away, right?
Yeah,
And the second apple brings him back unless you throw the apple at him to keep him away.
yeah. It makes you start to think that Liver King may have been onto something, eating all his
Yeah,
meat raw. Yeah,
who,
I know y'all seen
who,
that guy. The Liver
who,
King. You haven't seen him online? He's all over social media. He eats his meat raw. That's like
yeah,
his thing.
yeah,
yeah.
He's just a character online, but
It is.
he
Yeah,
eats everything raw. So I was just like, he may be on to something.
yeah.
But another thing you were talking about that you pointed out was adding oils to your food after you heat it up. Because I'm a big meal prepper, so that speaks to me. I like to meal prep my lunches. So what's the idea of adding the oil after you heat it up rather than just cooking it in the oil? What's the difference there?
That's for
Pops, you
you
want
to.
to take that one?
Oh yeah,
No,
either one of
I
y'all,
can
but
do
I
it.
was
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's very simple. The oils are very sensitive. They're damaged by light, by oxygen, and by heat. You want to keep them in the bottle, in the fridge, and then you cook your food. If you use the oil for cooking, the hotter the temperature is, the faster light and oxygen damage the oil. So you don't want to expose it to that. You don't put it in a frying pan. Frying is the dumbest thing we've ever invented to do to our food if health is our goal. So what you do is you cook your food, you do whatever you do, you use water for cooking, and then when the food is cooked, then you add the oil just before you eat it, which is what Ty said, right? Just before you eat it, because you want the least exposure of the oil to the elements that damage it.
So what are you
Yeah.
cooking your food in then? If you just don't use any oil at all, or what do you recommend to cook your food in, like, as
Well,
a
I'm 80.
substitute?
I'm 83, and when I was a kid, cooking meant in water. Now, when you talk to people about cooking, they usually mean oil. So the word has changed in its meaning. But people used to, before the oil industry was invented, everybody cooked everything in water. And sometimes they charred stuff, but they didn't use oil for cooking. There was no oil industry. Olive oil, which was traditional, was not used for frying. They added it to foods after they were cooked. They dump off the water and then add oil for flavor and for absorption for health benefits, right?
So what's
So,
your opinion on like beef tallow? I see a lot of people say
Mm.
this is like better for you than the seed oils and things. Is that okay to cook in like beef tallow, or you see a lot of people use the coconut oil, like the kind of paste?
yeah, my view is nothing from fats is appropriate for frying because you burn the food. When you burn the starches and you burn the proteins, they also increase inflammation and risk of cancer, independent of the oil, independent of the fats. What you can say is coconut and tallow and the hard fats are damaged less when you fry them than the oils, but then they don't have the essential oils in them either. So you're doing less damage to something that has less value, and you don't want to cook in oils because they're damaged the most. The better the oil is for you, the more toxic it becomes when you fry it. So the whole idea is like you do not want to use good oils for frying. And frying, but you can't say people say to me, well, what's good for frying? That's a Russian roulette question. What can I get away with? You don't get away with anything. And when you burn food, when you turn the food brown in tallow or in coconut, you're you're burning that food and you're changing molecules. And those molecules end up screwing up your biochemical architecture. So not doing that is better. So you should go from deep frying to frying, from frying to flash frying, from flash frying to boiling, from boiling to steaming, from steaming to raw, right? It step by step in that direction.
So
And it
what?
might take you a year to do it, but take the step.
So what? Speaking of oils adding to your food, say we're just gonna keep it basic. We're gonna say I'm gonna eat chicken and rice. That's what I have for lunch. What kind of oil and how much do you recommend I put on it after I heat it up?
That's for you, Ty.
Okay. I think so. So I'm gonna take a step back and also talk maybe a little bit specifically about how I would cook that food first if you're not using oil. I'm a huge fan of sous vide. Sous vide is a great way to be able to cook things and be very precise about the temperature at which you cook foods, and you don't have to use any oil with it. You can do there's air fryers now, where you don't need to even use any oil either. So there's lots of other options. Poaching is another one. Steaming is another one. So once those foods are cooked and carefully cooked, then if an individual wants to reheat them, then you can do that in the oven. I'm not a fan of microwaves. My wife and I got rid of ours decades ago, literally, and so just reheating it in the oven is fine. And then you pour the oil, those good oils, so omega-3s and omega-6s. Usually, it depends on the individual, but you could start with 1 tablespoon and drizzle that on your food before you're going to eat it, or mix it into your food, or use it as a salad dressing base, or mix it, like say you said rice, so you could put it, on your rice. But you can make all kinds of, really cool, like I said, dressings.
Shakes and smoothies, right?
Say that again.
Shakes and smoothies too.
Yeah, smoothies. If you're doing that, but your question was specific to chicken and rice, or yams. If you do baked yams, you can put it on there instead of butter. So it actually will enhance the flavor of what you put it on. And if you make different, like I said, dressings that have herbs in it, and you keep it in glass in the fridge, and you add that, you can really create a lot of variety with it and enhance the flavor of your food. So.
And what kind
And you'll also improve the absorption of the oil soluble nutrients in the food when you put oil in your food. So it gives you another health bonus that's people don't think about.
So you can absorb the nutrients better.
Yeah.
So what kind of oils do y'all recommend? I know there's a ton of them out there. Which kind of what are y'all's go-tos? Like, what do you recommend?
That one's for you, Ty.
Pop, that one's yours.
Okay, well, I use the oil I developed. I started in 1986 with flaxseed oil, because that's a really rich source of omega-3s, plant-based, and the body will convert those into fish oil. The only reason why, that's most of when they say your body can't convert, that's just fish oil advertising, because it's not true. It's only if you get a ton of omega-6s and not enough omega-3s that the omega-6s will crowd out the omega-3s. So you got to get the balance between them right, because they both use the same mechanism in your body to get converted into hormone-like regulating substances. So So you want to have the ratio right. And most people get a ton of, like, we're getting now 1/6 of the omega 3s that people got 150 years ago. And we've doubled, at least doubled, and probably tripled, maybe even 10 times our omega 6 intake. So we've really slanted that ratio in the past 150 years. So you got to get that ratio back. And that's really important. So we did the flax oil, and flax oil has a lot of omega 3, not enough omega 6. I became omega 6 deficient on it. So I developed a blend where the ratio is better, twice as much omega 3 as omega 6. And the blend is called Udo's oil because I developed and somebody put my name on it.
So what did you mix it with? What did you blend in there with it?
Flaxseed for omega 3s, sunflower and sesame for omega 6s, evening primrose oil for GLA, which is an omega 6 derivative, and the polyphenols. There's rice germ and oat germ for the minor ingredients, ferulic acid and cytosterols. And then we have soy lecithin that emulsifies oils and makes them easier to digest and absorb. And we have a little bit of coconut for the antioxidants in it, but also for the flavor. And we have vitamin E, which are a big part of the antioxidants that help to keep the oils fresh. I think that should be 9. So 9 ingredients, all organic, all in glass, because if you put oil in plastic, the plastic swells and plastic will then leach into oils. And then it's organic because you don't want pesticides in your oils. And then we put a box around it to cut the light out. And then we keep it refrigerated to keep it fresh. So it's refrigerated in the factory, it's refrigerated in the store, it's refrigerated at home. And if we ship it longer than 2 weeks, we even ship it refrigerated. Like when it goes from Washington State to Asia or Europe, it's actually shipped refrigerated. So we're taking care of these most sensitive of our nutrients in the way they need to be taken care of, so they retain their health benefits. So we went the extra mile, and it was really fun to do that.
Yeah, so you're not just taking one oil, you're kind of taking a concoction of multiple oils mixed together.
Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting.
Yeah, because every seed has a different setup. Some people have 60%, some seeds have 60% of the seed is oil, some of them 20%. And then how much omega-3 and how much omega-6 is different for every seed. So we set it up, it's twice as much omega-3 as omega-6, enough omega-3s not to become deficient, both made with health in mind, so that both can do their jobs in your cells.
You mentioned a little bit about fish oil. I've heard some negative things about fish oil. So what's your take on fish oil? Because I've heard that a lot of the stuff you can get in your grocery store is probably not worth taking, but 2, it's probably harmful for you. So what do you say about that?
You know what? What do you think about fish oil? Well, when you take a capsule of fish oil and you get that burp, that fishy burp, that's what you think about fish oil. That's already enough. Why is that? Because they're damaged. And why is that? Because if you take like saturated fat and it has a certain stability, and you compare that to the stability of fish oil that has EPA and DHA in it, the fish oil is 156 times more sensitive to damage by light and oxygen than the saturated fat is. So it's super sensitive. And the fish oil omega-3s, EPA and DHA, are 5 times more sensitive than the plant-based omega-3s. So it's super. You get a little bottle of fish oil, and you keep it in your fridge. You open up, a little air gets in, and within days you can smell the rancidity of the fish oil. That's how sensitive they are. So that's the one issue. The second issue is that the fish oils are treated like the seed oils. Those are treated with sodium hydroxide, phosphoric acid, bleached, and then heated to frying temperature to deodorize them. And because they're way more sensitive than the omega-6 oils, which are about 1% damaged, The fish oils are 25 times more sensitive than that. So they might be 10% damaged. So again, then you end up with molecules that never existed in nature that go in your body somewhere and interfere. So that's a problem. So if you take more than 5 capsules of fish oil, 5.1 grams of fish oil a day, you can increase inflammation when EPA and DHA are actually both anti-inflammatory. That's from the damage. Then the third thing is that the higher on the food chain the oil comes from, the more toxins are in the oil. So PCBs, dioxins, pesticides, anything that's oil soluble, we dump it on land, it goes downhill, ends up in the ocean. In the ocean, it concentrates in whatever is fat in the ocean, in the creatures, and the algae have the least. They actually make the fish oil, EPA and DHA, and then the krill eat the algae and concentrate it, and then the little fish eat the krill, and then the big fish eat the little fish, and then the toxins concentrate up the food chain. And what we mostly get is pretty high on the food chain. So fish is now the dirtiest meat on the planet. So you could say fish oil is the dirtiest natural oil on the planet. And then to get that out requires more processing. And in that processing, you do more damage. So the fish oils are now more damaged than they were 20 years ago. And because they had to set limits at one point, they had like 1,300 parts per billion of PCBs and dioxins. And there are no safe levels of those. They're super carcinogenic, teratogenic, cause birth defects, inflammatory, toxic. So the government said, no, got to bring them down to 90, from 1,300 to 90 parts per billion. 90 parts per billion is still not safe, but they had to put a limit because if you said 0, you couldn't sell fish oil. So they have to do more processing, and in that processing, they do more damage. So you're getting rid of some of the toxins, but you're creating new toxins by the damage you do to the oil in the process of trying to clean it up. So for me, if you're going to use supplements, where you get three pills, I would say take krill oil, don't take fish oil. Because krill oil is a different oil. It's more stable. The processing is completely different. It has its own antioxidants in it, and you need less of it to get the same job done.
So what I'm hearing is stay away from fish oil, basically.
100%. I don't touch it. In fact, I'm out to prove that you don't need. I don't take krill oil either, but krill oil is not damaged like fish oil is. But I'm out to prove that that your body can do the conversion, because the only reason it won't do the conversion is if your ratio is off. You get too much omega-6 and not enough omega-3. I'm here to prove it. I'm 83, and so far I'm still firing it on at least 2 cylinders.
Yeah, so you just recommend getting those omega-3s through, the other oils or through your diet. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I've heard the same. I've heard before about that the fish oils are not beneficial for you. So I just want to clear that up and get your opinion on that. Yeah.
And it's not the fish oil, it's the damage and the toxicity that are the issues. Because if the fish was clean and the oil was clean, I used to eat salmon all the time. But now it's like, even in Alaska, you'd think Alaska would be pretty clean because nobody lives there, right? Mm-hmm. Even in Alaska, the salmon has PCBs and dioxins in it. So you can't isolate a piece of ocean. Whatever goes in the ocean ends up going everywhere. So you can't say, okay, I'm going to get organic fish. You can't get organic fish unless you grow them in a pond, but you can't grow organic fish in the ocean because you can't isolate the ocean. Right?
That's true.
So it's like,
So when let's say you're working with the client and we're gonna get these better oils in their diet, what are some of the first signs that you see that the oils are starting to work, like the essential fatty acids are doing what they're supposed to do? Like, do you see, how quickly do you see some of those results, and what are those results? Like, what can somebody look for to say, okay, it's doing what it's supposed to do?
Yeah. I'll take this one. Yeah. Uh, the first thing that clients report is that they get a boost in energy. That's the very first thing they notice, which is pretty cool because they're working out already, and if they're just starting an exercise program, to have more energy is pretty significant. The second thing is, depending on, let's say it's a physique type of client, so someone that say wants to lose a body fat, they want to burn body fat, they want to lean out. When the macronutrient profile is structured, so their proteins, carbs, and fats are structured in a way that supports that, when you use essential fatty acids like a oil blend as their foundational fats for their program, there's an accelerated response in fat burning. Obviously, they still have to exercise, but it's more significant of a change in body composition than if they were not incorporating those fats. So I've even experimented with clients over the years. Do you remember the Atkins diet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the Atkins diet just used any type of fats, and mostly saturated fats or hard fats. And so I had clients that would use an Atkins type of diet where they would just eat any old fat. So they were pounding back bacon and all kinds of stuff, right? But when they would switch their fats out and they would use essential fatty acids, their fat burning would actually accelerate even more because they're getting that metabolic benefit from those omega-3s mostly. And they had more energy, and they would recover faster from exercise. So when they recovered faster from exercise, if they were an athlete, that meant that they could also train at a higher intensity and recover faster for their next training session or event or competition or race or whatever that sport would be. So that's when it really piqued my interest, because I saw the performance and physiological effects, and those are measurable. That's the cool part too, is you can measure all that stuff. You can measure body composition. You can measure performance through speed or strength. You can measure how many days it takes you to recover faster than before. So you can actually get metrics from all of that and collect that data and see it for yourself or experience it for yourself. So that's what I think and there's all kinds of other health benefits as well that I think my dad can get into, but from a fitness perspective and practical application perspective, those are probably the first things that people are going to experience.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the reason why is because the omega-3s, they turn on the fat burning genes in the body, and they turn off the fat production gene.
Yeah.
And that's opposite to what carbs do. Carbs turn on, especially if you eat more than you burn, carbs turn on the fat production gene and they turn off the fat burning genes. And so when people want to lose weight, I always say to them, you need to do a fuel shift, not a fuel addition, but a fuel shift. So when you bring in the omega-3 rich oils, then at the same time lower your carb intake. And then because then what you're doing is you're pushing your body to burn fat, not to make fat. And that's like it's very reliable. If you eat a lot of carbs and then you just add oil to them, that doesn't work as well, because the carbs can be toxic. So the body pushes to burn them first. And so they can override the omega-3. So I always say, if you're going to use oils as your major fuel and you want to slim out, lower your carb intake. At the same time as you're still getting the same amount of energy, but you're getting the energy in a form that's more conducive to losing the extra fat in your body.
So speaking of carbs and fats, kind of macronutrients here, I know this answer will change depending on the person, obviously, but what's kind of the ideal range you would like your, your carbs, fats, and proteins to be in, like a percentage wise? Like, do you want your fats to be 20% of your diet, 30%? What's kind of your philosophy on that one?
Yeah, well, that depends on what your goal is,
Yeah.
right? Because if you want to be the fat man in a movie, then you have to do the opposite of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Let's
So,
say, for example, just like an athlete, somebody that's an athlete, they're training for a specific
yeah.
sport, like they're a runner.
Mhm.
Would
Do you
you?
want to take that one? I'll take that one.
No, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I've competed in endurance sports and worked with lots of clients in endurance sports, and I think there's two approaches that you can take. One is you can go with more of a traditional approach, where where your carbohydrate intake is a bit higher, the ratio would be 50, 30, 20 is pretty standard. But even if you just switch out your fats for good fats, so for that 20% of fat intake, they'll still notice a significant difference in performance. I also know endurance athletes, though, that like to use keto for endurance racing, and that also works. However, you have to give yourself 2 weeks to make that metabolic shift from using glycogen as your primary fuel source to fatty acids as your primary source. And then the macronutrient ratio is obviously significantly different. So your fats are going to be the highest around, depending on the individual, because some people can get into ketosis very easily and others have struggle, because you can convert some amino acids into glycogen. And also, one way to test whether you're in ketosis, because a lot of people say, oh, I'm in ketosis because I'm tired. But when you actually test their urine with keto sticks, they're not actually in ketosis, they're just tired. So the way to actually tell if you're burning ketones is to use keto sticks. And you can easily do that by just buying those, online or in a drugstore, and test them yourself. However, once you make the metabolic switch, and I've done it myself, most of the diets out there that you've heard of, whether it's paleo, keto, eat right for your blood type, the zone, I've done them all, and once you make the metabolic switch, it's pretty wild how much energy you get. It's pretty significant, if you want to do that. However, I am going to mention one word of caution about that, or two. One is women generally need more carbohydrates for their menstrual cycle. And so they don't respond as well in that regard metabolically to ketosis. And so again, it's based on the individual. I'm not saying don't do it, but they may find that they struggle with their menstrual cycle more when they do extreme keto. And the other thing is when you are in ketosis and you start introducing carbohydrates to your diet again, you want to be careful that you introduce them slowly. Don't just start pounding back carbohydrates like crazy. Even if you do carb loading after you've carb depleted, it still has to be done in a structured way. And that's done over the carb depleting and then loading and manipulating your water is done over the course of a week. Whether it's for performance or aesthetic benefits, and those two are done differently. So I don't know if that answers your question. I probably went a little bit too far into it, but
so I'll add a little bit to that. I usually say about 25% of calories as fat, as good fats, as fats, as oils made with health in mind, in the right ratio, organic, right? So 25%. So that would be, for most adults, it would be somewhere between 2 and 4 tablespoons a day, mixed in food, spread out over the course of the day. And the thing that I find is really interesting, your fats give you stable energy. Even the hard fats will give you stable energy. But these will give you more energy, but it'll be stable energy. Whereas the carbs, you get unstable energy. You get, you eat too much, and then blood sugar goes up, and then that's the toxic thing, and then the insulin drives it into the cells, and in the cells you burn what you can, and the rest gets turned into fat. And the body's really good at doing that. And then when the body's turned the excess into fat, then you have low blood sugar, and then you get cravings, and then you eat, until the sugar is normal. But by the time it's been digested and absorbed, you've eaten too much, so you end up with high blood sugar again, and that's what a carb addiction cycle is. It's like measured 4 to 8 times more addictive than cocaine. That's how. And when you take out the carbs as your main fuel and make fats your main fuel, you end up getting stable energy and long-term energy. And then some people say, well, you're going to get fat because fats have 9 calories per gram and carbs only have 4. No, when you eat fats, they suppress appetite. So it's really hard to overeat fats. And when you overeat fats too much, you actually get nauseous. And if you then ate more fat on top of it, you would throw up. So it's hard to become, but with omega, honestly, if you're focusing on omega 3 and 6 and giving the preference to omega 3s like we do, it's impossible. It's impossible to get overweight on that. On the carbs, you get overweight in 2 ways. One is you turn on fat production in your cells, but the other one is that sugar will give you inflammation. So carbs can also give you inflammation, and then your overweight is water retention. So you can get 2 ways: overweight from carbs, and omega 3s dump your water retention because they decrease inflammation, and they give you stable energy so you don't end up creating fat production, and they turn on and turn up fat burning genes.
So you recommend the keto diet for essentially.
I don't do a keto diet. I just give preference to getting my fats right. So I'm not trying to become keto. I'm just trying to keep body and soul together, and I don't like it when I put on weight. So I just do it by what my body tells me. So I make sure that I get the fats right. The proteins is not a big deal. I eat mostly whole foods, mostly plant-based, and then I eat fruit. I eat fruit, and that depends on. It's kind of like I put the fruit last.
So you're getting your
Right?
carbs through your fruit.
So that way, I get the carbs from the fruit. Yeah, I don't use sugar or any of that stuff, but I get the carbs from the fruit. But because I put them last, I don't feel like overeating them, and my energy doesn't go down because I'm getting it from the fats. So it actually works without me having to be. I'm just giving that priority, and that makes everything easy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Essentially, I mean, I hear most people kind of go lower carb. It's kind of the way most people recommend nowadays. Not necessarily ketosis, where you're having essentially no carbs, but lower carb diets typically seem to be better nowadays, or that's what I'm hearing now.
Yeah. But I wouldn't say lower carb. I would say optimize fats. See, the focus is optimize the fats.
Yeah.
Because then lower carb follows that.
Lower carb is just a side effect of focusing on the fat more.
Yeah. And it's better to say do this rather than say don't do that.
Yeah. You got to change the mindset, the way you think of it. That helps.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to make a change today, with the oils that they're eating, what do y'all recommend that they do?
I would want to know what they're doing before I tell them how they should fix it.
Well, I guess a better way of putting that question would be, what do they need to look for when they're buying some oil? Obviously, you said earlier you probably can't find it in the store. So I guess just what kind of oils do they need to be looking for? Like, is there words on the bottle that they need to look for, or you said it's the way they're
Yeah,
processed. They're probably not going to put that on the bottle. So like, how do they know
yeah,
what's a good
no.
oil and what's a bad one?
Okay, you need to know who's making the oil. And in a way, it's like we fixed that because we did all the things you need to do. We didn't cut corners, and it says Udo's oil, right? I mean, that's pretty simple, right? And I don't know. There's nobody like I've been working on this for 45 years. Started in 1981. I got poisoned in 1980. I've been working on this for 45 years. Nobody has copied me. Nobody else is doing it. And why is it? Because it's a pain in the butt to take the kind of care that we take of the oil that nobody wants to do. I'm weird that way. I don't mind hard work, right? And then, but then the outcome of it and the results people get, that's what I live for because that feels good in the heart. You're doing something good for people. Just like when you hurt people, it doesn't feel good in the heart. When you do something that works for people, it feels good in the heart, and I live for that. I don't know what's your Ty?
I think from a practical approach, first of all, figure out what you're currently doing. So do a food journal. Do 3 days. Write down everything you eat, drink, supplement, the times, the portions. What I have found to be the most effective macronutrient ratio is 33, 33, 33. I love that ratio. And it seems to work for the widest group of people. So whether you want to call that lower carb or higher fat or moderate protein or all three, that's the one I'm a big fan of. I've experimented with it extensively with myself and with clients, and then you can modify from there. So start there and then modify depending on your level of activity, what kind of sport you participate in. If you're trying to do something that's more aesthetic or physique related, because everyone is different and their needs are different, how much sleep they get is different, and everyone's lifestyle is different. So that's the place to start. Obviously, I'll be more specific about proteins, high quality proteins that rate high on the PDC AAS or whatever measure you want to use for protein quality. And if you're vegan or vegetarian, you are going to have to supplement to optimize your protein or amino acid content intake. It's just the way it works. As far as carbohydrates, low glycemic carbohydrates are low on the insulin and glycemic index. Ideally, you can have a little bit of fruit. I'm a big fan of berries because they don't have significant glycemic impact. So I would say that's how you cover your carbs. Don't overcook your proteins. As we talked about earlier, I'm a huge fan of whey protein isolate because, again, there's a lot of care that's taken in producing whey protein isolate, and it's protected from heat, and that's why it retains the highest amount of essential amino acids and branched chain amino acids. And so I think that is a great way for at least vegetarians to get a quality protein source. In vegans, it's a little bit different because they're doing something slightly different. And then, of course, as we've talked about, for most of the time together, is clean up your fats. Just replace your bad fats with essential fats, and that is an incredible start. I think once people do apply those strategies, they will see a significant change in how they both look and feel.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that answer a lot. So I guess I was just gonna let y'all off with that one. I want to respect y'all's time. I know we kind of went over a little bit over the hour mark. I don't know if y'all had extra time or not. I guess I see you stepped away, but I did want to. Maybe you can answer this. Where can you find the oil at? Is it on the website? What's the name of the website? Where can people find it at if they want to look into it?
So you can definitely find it in both Canada and the US. I'm not sure where your viewers are based out of, but and also I think in the UK. typically in health food stores is where you'll be able to find it. You can go to udoerasmus.com and find it there as well, or at least a link to there. And for your viewers, even we created something for them, that just sums up everything that we've talked about in reference to fats in general, because it can be a little bit confusing for people. So we can direct them to there as well if you like, which would be on Linktree, and it's MyFit2Win is where you can find that. And there's a downloadable booklet that will clarify all of the stuff that we've talked about.
Yeah, we can put the link down in the description of the video. So if y'all are interested in what he's talking about, just check out the description, and we'll put the link down there for y'all.
Cool.
And you said it can be in like health food stores. Is it in Whole Foods? Because I think in my area, that's kind of the only one we have is Whole Foods.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other ones in our area that would be considered like a health food store like that. So yeah, check it out at Whole Foods or on the website. And where you mentioned you wrote a book as well. Where can they find your book at?
Oh, Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill is the tome. You can get that on Amazon. And then I have a new one that's called Your Body Needs an Oil Change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a more street version of the story of oils, and it talks a little bit about other parts of human nature as well.
Awesome. So if y'all are interested in get one of those, check those out on Amazon. But I just want to say thank y'all so much for joining the podcast. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot myself. So a lot of those questions were for me. I got some swaps I need to do in my pantry real quick. But thank y'all for joining the podcast. I really enjoyed it.
The exam is in 6 months.
Yeah, I'll have to study up for that one. I'll have to get the book, study it. But yeah, thank y'all so much for joining. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Murphy.
All right. Well, thanks for having us. Yeah, you ask all the right questions.
Absolutely. I'm sure the listeners will definitely get something from it, and I'm sure they learned something because I know I did.
Awesome.
But yeah, that's going to be it for today's podcast episode. I hope y'all enjoyed it, and y'all be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the Fitness Beginner Podcast. Thank y'all.